Wow, that's okay. Lots of panelists. I'm going to ask the panelists, if possible, and if you're presentable, to start
Hmm.
your video as well.
All right, you
All
see the
right.
slides? We're all good?
Yes, all good. So, one, I want to welcome everybody to our Connect 3 and 3 community conversation. This is something where we have been having this conversation around bridging the digital divide in Detroit for quite some time. This work definitely predates me. It predates a lot of us in this space, but there's definitely, a litany of individuals, organizations who have leaned in a big way, and we're always thankful for those commitments that got us here. And I would say that for moving forward, Connect Through and Through, what you're going to hear today, is really the structure. How do we actually find a way to move this forward in a way where we're not getting off track and we're able to maximize everybody's impact as it relates to this cause? In addition, we're not really looking forward to finding ways to usurp anyone, rather find ways to enhance and explore. And, throughout this journey thus far, there's been a number of people who have made suggestions and recommendations saying, hey, have you thought of this person? Have you thought of this person? Have you thought of this group? And like, yes, as much as we can. And what we want to do is make the point to say that the structure that we're building today, or unveiling today rather, and until the end of the year, as we fine tune and get people in order, that we want as much buy-in as possible. We want as much people as possible. This isn't really meant to be something that is a city thing. It's not owned by really any corporation, rather. It's much more us trying to set the stage and say, let's move forward as a collective community. And so, there's been obviously through the pandemic, a lot of folks have just stepped up in a big way. I am not going to go down that list. I was going to. I had a list of actors, but that's probably the best problem that we can have. That's folks nationally, definitely locally. Our internet providers, our school district, the city, and countless philanthropic entities who have all really just stepped up. They're going to be weighing in on this call at various points throughout. But just want to say, like, one, we're incredibly thankful for everyone's time. And truthfully, we really can't do this without anyone who's on this call. And in addition, for the folks who couldn't make it today, definitely can't do it without them either. This is meant to be a full ecosystem approach. And for some of you have heard us when we say we want to make Detroit the national model for digital inclusion. That's us saying that in order for us to do that, we need to make sure that one, what we're building is replicable. Two, that whatever we're building, the resources that we get are net new and that it's not going to break down our structure. And three, we need community voice, community sentiment to make sure that whatever we're deploying, whatever we're building out, isn't one just making people very, very upset, I should say. And so, in general updates aside, as we move forward, the agenda for this, want to define Connect 3 and 3, really get into not the weeds per se, maybe grass about the structure and governance. Like, how does this Connect 3 and 3 as an entity function? Typically in the digital inclusion conversation, you'll see a lot of people who are nonprofits, community leaders who have very well intentions, and they're going to come around in a circle. You'll see this in other cities, and the decision making isn't really allocated in a way for us to move forward together as a collective. And so Connect 3 and 3 and us explaining that structure and governance is really what we're going to do. The purpose of this call, the guiding principle in this call is the Community Advisory Council. We really want to make sure that as folks want to lean in on addressing the digital divide and bridging the digital divide in Detroit, that Community Advisory Council, that's where it starts. And so today, for all the folks who are leaning in, and for the people who are going to be seeing this webinar in a recorded fashion, the Community Advisory Council is the starting point. I'm going to keep driving that point. We're going to go into some fun reflections later, then open this up for some question and answer. I think there's going to be a lot of questions. We're going to do our best to answer those. I know my email is at the very end of this presentation. And so if folks just have outstanding questions beyond that, we're going to delve into that. The last thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to turn this over, is really us looking at when we start talking about the digital divide specifically in Detroit, and this Connect 3 and 3 approach. This isn't going to be something that we're going to say that, hey, tomorrow, as we talk about this digital equity fund and we're spending down, that these resources are allocated immediately. This is the long game approach, where we are, in many cases, we say we're rushing to the starting line. And so from now until January 1st, this is us fitting and getting this structure tight, exploring as many options and developing as many partnerships as possible and planting those seeds for us to move forward together. And so right now it's really pivotal for us to solicit as much feedback, and that feedback is primarily going to be driven by that Community Advisory Council. And we're going to be passing around a survey through the chat, through this meeting, as well as after this meeting, for folks to indicate their level of interest, and honestly give us their contact information for serving on that committee, because ultimately that's where we're able to get that community sentiment to begin driving our decision making. Next slide. So really wanting to tee up first on the framing the need, Cindy Eggleton of Brilliant Detroit, you know, we've had a number of partners and multiple folks who just want to weigh in. So I'm going to turn this over to Cindy real quick, just to really just provide a high level overview of, one, the need for digital inclusion and why an entity like Brilliant Detroit sees the value of getting involved in this work.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I am ridiculously excited to be on this call and actually to be thinking about how do we do this in a way that is complete enough and is driven by people's needs and people's voices. So Josh, I really appreciate what you've said so far in this. And what I wanted to do was to sort of lift up a couple of things that we have heard that sort of lift up what's going on. And first off, I think everybody on this call is pretty much friends, but Brilliant Detroit serves about 7,000 individuals in Detroit out of currently 11 neighborhoods. And our work is totally in a with, for, and by. So it's driven by the neighborhoods and voice in community. And so we get a lot of voice. And especially during COVID, we have been making weekly phone calls to every one of our participants and done surveys. So what I'm going to talk about kind of sums up what we've heard and what we see. So number one, right out of the gate with COVID, one of the very first calls I got was one of our very key participants in the Osborne neighborhood. Jazz actually is in a GED program with us. Her kids are after school tutoring. Her younger kids are participating as well, and she is doing language development. In the GED program, we have had to shift because she doesn't have literacy to actually complete the GED program. In their household with 5 individuals, the digital device that they have is a cell phone. Now, all of that is happening from a digital divide standpoint, but at the same time, this is really somebody who comes to our Brilliant Detroit location 5 days a week, highly engaged, wants the best for her and her children. She called me and said, I need to talk to you specifically. So I gave her a call back. And what she said to me is, look, we're really struggling. We're 3 days in. My daughter's done with her homework. I don't know what to do. We don't have enough devices. I don't to work these devices. I'm worried about my kids, and I'm worried about my progress to take care of them because I'm not able to be on my career path that I was part of. I think what she was lifting up for us is that doing a solution here is about devices. It's also about internet, but it's also about helping set schedules with families and helping them learn how to use the devices for their own purposes and also for their children's. It was all wrapped up in that call. And we were able to help her. But then I will get to our own staff, which is the case with many not-for-profits. And we have 92 partners that are other not-for-profits in our work. So I'm hearing this from all of them as well. Our own staff is digitally or technologically literate as one would want. We've hired for people that are really good caregivers in the community, but they themselves are not able to do these things in the way that they need. So right there, we see kind of all the needs wrapped up in terms of what we see Detroiters. What I also saw in this conversation was a desire and a need. It's not just a gimme. It's not just give me a device. It's how do you help me? And also, we walked her through this. I just saw her yesterday, as well as some of our staff. And what I've gotten back from them is this is the best I've ever felt. I really felt kind of alone. I didn't feel like I had what I needed, and I feel better in control of my family and myself. This is an opportunity for us to get this right. It's also an opportunity for us to use digital tools to help advance people in a world that's not equitable to begin with. And it's more than just superficial. And so what I was saying to the team on all this is I'm ridiculously excited about this because what we're looking for is not just handing out a device or internet. It's really helping people gain that literacy in how to use the devices and then how to find their way that is critically important in a time that's going to last for a while. So I have felt more encouraged by this effort than I think I ever have. We ourselves did go out and get some devices because although DPSCD, as many of you have funded, our computers that didn't help for some of the summertime, especially because we run along with United Way, we're the backbone for 313 Reads, grade level reading. Also, Skillman's a key partner on that. And so our kids needed devices. They were sharing devices amongst 4 or 5. Oftentimes, it was on a cell phone. And then there are a lot of charter schools that don't have any of that. And then the volunteers themselves didn't know how to do it. So I think, again, we need a more complete solution that's driven by people's real needs, that helps lift up their power and their skills in order to have a more connected future and actually a better workforce for the city. So those are some of the beginning things that I see and I experience hands-on. In the last 3 months, we've made 6,000 phone calls to different individuals. So what I've just described has been repeated, and repeated. But what I've seen is a desire to fix this and do what's best for their kids and themselves. So I hope that kind of gives an overview there.
It definitely does, and we're incredibly thankful to have partners like Brilliant Detroit and the many others who have just stepped up in this time of uncertainty. And even before the pandemic, this was an issue that many people had obviously mobilized to address. And I think that our ecosystem at times doesn't really support those folks who in a way that is necessary for all of us to thrive. And so I think that one of the things that Cindy had said that I want folks to, I guess, resonate a little bit more with is the total individual approach where, yes, we're focusing on the kids. We're also focusing on the adults. We don't want people sharing devices. We really want to make this a way where people are comfortable. I would say that the framework we're using is not inundating anyone with technology, rather creating an integrated ecosystem whereby if people were to be extended an equitable opportunity to excel, we don't want technology to be what holds them back. And someone who does great work on that is Bartel Welch as well. And Bartel, if you would like to weigh in a bit and just speak about the need that you all are addressing through Code 313, that would be great as well.
All right, definitely. Sorry, let me turn on my video here too. Sorry, I'm walking outside. I got construction going on in my house. But yeah, the digital divide is the entire reason why I started Code 313 in the first place. I myself, by trade, first I have a degree in chemistry, one in biology, and I was in med school here at Wayne State. But I was in love with technology since a young person, due to my mom working for DPS. She was a teacher in DPS for 20 years, administrator, everything, now retired. But I was lucky enough to have a computer at my home. Literally all of my years of being school. And I just had a knack and a love for technology. Uh, Eventually, I started joining a couple different digital agencies, doing web design and other digital aspects of digital marketing. And as I sat in different boardrooms across the country, working with brands such as Chase, Foot Locker, Chrysler, you name it, I noticed something in every room that I sat in, and that was I didn't see people that looked like me in the rooms. Not only that looked like me, but came from backgrounds like me. Being born and raised in the city of Detroit, attending all DPS schools, I didn't see that. And it really bothered me, and I was wondering why. So I did my own research on it to figure out what is the problem? Why am I not seeing more of me in this technology field? And what I started to learn by visiting schools and going to talk to people was that even some of the schools, or even like right now because of COVID, people getting technology resources in computers and devices, there was still something lacking. And that lack was the resources to teach those devices and to teach what can be done on those devices. And not just to use it just for school, not just to use it just to write a paper, check email, or be on Instagram or Snapchat. It was a lot of other things that could be done on it, but the kids were not being shown, or the parents, what could be done to advance their lives and potential careers for the future. And that was the piece I saw that was missing. So Code 313 was born. And since then, we've, officially in the last year and a half, touched over around 25,000 students in the Metro Detroit area. And what I've seen from it is once these youth are given the exposure to technology and to digital literacy, they're jumping into it. They're excited. They want to learn. And that was what the problem was. They just weren't giving access to it. So now that they have access, they're yearning for way more attention to it, yearning for more resources. I have parents calling me all the time saying, "Hey, are you guys going to do one-on-one tutoring with it? What's the next workshop? When is the next workshop?" And that's because once the kids were given access, they're loving it. And that is the piece that's missing. Like I said, I love the fact that, unfortunately we have this pandemic going on. We have COVID being introduced. But one thing that good that's coming out of it is it's exposing this gap more. And because of that, it is gaining this attention, like what we're doing on this call, and it's getting those technology resources in place because it has to be in place now. Whereas I think it was always something that had to be there, but the attention wasn't being put to it. But now that we're being forced to it, more families are getting access to those devices, et cetera. But I think the need to still teach them how to use it, teach them other things that they can do with them, and teach them about the careers that exist once you learn them is still super important. And, as we continue to work within the city, and now, especially being almost 100% virtual now, it's not a only local thing. It's a national thing, and we're seeing it bigger and bigger and bigger every day. So, from my standpoint, I think that's the general case of what I think is what's really still needed. Touching on what Cindy started with, and again, I think the other piece is the education piece too, beyond just having the devices. That's me.
So thank you, Bartel. And, I think that there's a great point that's being made in both by Cindy and Bartel as well, that one, this is a national thing. This does not specifically make Detroit so special, and that we're the only ones dealing with this. I think it's going to be special in the way that we're responding, and that our response isn't just focused on kids. It's focused on, this is for everybody. This is a chance and an opportunity to educate our ecosystem, and not just say we're deploying computers or we're deploying Wi-Fi networks we're doing this in a total ecosystem approach and taking into consideration the folks that live in our community, and then also outlining the goals for us to be able to excel ahead by saying, let's plant these seeds today and let's use this opportunity in this moment while everything is digital to then extend our purview into where we need to go, specifically as we look at a very uncertain economy moving forward. Us planting these tech seeds, not just for kids, but for families, and expanding that opportunity in a way where we're taking that whole individual. It's really what we're focused on here, and not doing it in a segmented or a siloed fashion. And so when we talk about Connect 313, that very general brand is meant to be something that is not imposing or is not, leaning in one way or other. It's much more to say, hey, we have an issue. And so diving into this, look, the mission and vision of what we're doing here, the vision is making sure that every single Detroiter is fully digitally included, improving the quality of life for all residents. And so when I'm saying that, oftentimes, again, people will just make the case for kids, or they'll make the case for older residents. And we're saying every Detroiter, all residents, and finding those inroads. So if you're talking about members of the disabled community, absolutely. If you're talking about returning citizens, if you're talking about veterans, if you're talking about single parents, I mean, this is a thing where we are really trying to be as holistic as possible. And the mission, quite frankly, is putting in place the infrastructure that by 2024, all Detroiters have access to appropriate devices, internet connectivity, technical support, and digital resources for improved learning, employment, and well-being. And focusing on that last part, learning, employment, and well-being. We were very intentional with the wording here. When we're talking about well-being, sometimes people will say, well, you don't want to give people devices just so they can go on Netflix. Well, yeah, no, that if that's a part of someone's well-being, yeah, we should absolutely be focusing on that. We are not building a model that is just so specific and doesn't really take into account of reality. Entertainment is something that obviously is part of people's lives. And so, yes, we're saying that. Yes, we're saying for learning's sake, also for employment, for people to get jobs. I mean, we really want to focus on the entire ecosystem, the total individual, and everything, every intersection there. And our goals is really to establish Connect 313 as that effective distributed and coordinating mechanism for all Detroit digital inclusion stakeholders who collaboratively share responsibilities, insights, resources, and expertise. And so when we're saying a coordinating mechanism, that's us saying, hey, organization A that is doing an incredible job over here, we want to help empower you to do more. No different than organization B, as you come into this ecosystem, or maybe you've been in this ecosystem for quite some time, but you might not necessarily have this digital inclusion focus. How can we empower you to do more as well? And how do we do that in a coordinated fashion that's actually backed by data, so that way we know what we're doing, we're actually quantifying impact to empower us to get much more resources. More resources could be more funding. More resources could also be more folks who are just getting involved with the great minds to help push this stuff forward. The last thing I'll say on this total thing, our last Connect 313 convening, March, I know March was, we did it in the beginning of March before we knew a lot of stuff, but we did it in the beginning of March in person. And the recommendation was, well, Josh, okay, yeah, we hear what you guys are doing, but how do we move this forward? How do we actually do this work? Yeah, we know the issue, and COVID has shown the issue better than any of us ever could. We know this is an issue, but how do we move forward and get this work done? And so today, as we unveil this and go into the structure of everything, that's us answering the question that was asked at our last convening, and now we're using this momentum to really drive this forward in an expedited capacity. So I'm actually going to turn this over to a great thought partner in this work, Laura Graneman at Quicken Loans, really who's going to touch on reinforce the critical nature of this work.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm really honored to be a part of this group. And thank you also for all of the work that you guys are doing all across our city. I think one of the points that I just really want to reinforce is the fact that there's a fantastic amount of work happening in all corners of our city already. The real value of what I think Connect 313 is going to bring is this idea of really tying threads, connecting the dots between all of the work that we do so that we can continue to empower every community partner, whether you're explicitly involved in digital inclusion or not, to continue to get involved. Because the reality is, as we've seen so fantastically with COVID-19, that every single person is impacted in some way by the digital divide, and it might be in many different ways. But we focus at the Quicken Loans Community Fund on housing, employment, and public life. Those are kind of our big three. You notice I did not say digital inclusion in any of those three, but as we've gone over the past year, over the past 2 years, and in particular over the last 3 months, as we've talked to every one of our community partners, it is clear that digital inclusion is the thread that ties every one of our community partners together at this point in time. Every community partner is grappling with digital inclusion, whether you are directly engaged in that work right now or whether you need to be going forward. People are having to pivot programming. We know that housing resources are accessible online. We know that job resources, job trainings, unemployment assistance, all accessible online. Education, and of course, the most basic for all of us is just maintaining a connection with our friends, with our family, with our coworkers, and so many others. So there's so much, this is the foundation of so much work that needs to happen for our city going forward. And I'm really, again, honored to be part of the group. I'm also really excited to say that we are at the Quicken Loans Community Fund, and alongside our partnership with the Rocket Mortgage Classic, are going to be providing the seed funding for Connect 313. So we've got this absolutely fantastic foundation to already build upon with all of the work that you all have been doing for years in our community. We've got incredible momentum from all of the funders that are joining this call and who are also leaning in very meaningful ways. And now we've also got some really great funding. And so I think with those three really important components, we're gonna see, I hope, some magic being made where we can move forward very quickly as a community around the digital divide. And as Josh mentioned, you know, not just give everyone a device, not just give everyone access to the internet, but really leapfrog over some of the sister cities that we have across the country and make sure that we are holistically providing support to our community residents in order to serve every need that they might have related to digital inclusion. So thanks again for having me. I'm really excited to be here and happy to answer any questions going forward.
Thank you, Laura. And I love the sentiment that's being expressed here. It just reinforces, you know, us being on the same page or getting on the same page as much as possible as we address this issue in a very nuanced and holistic fashion. And I am happy to be able to turn this over to Dr. Darian Hudson, the President and CEO of United Way, where she can weigh in as well about how, you know, they see this work being critical to, you know, driving Detroit forward.
Sure. So good afternoon, everyone. Josh, thank you so much. And Laura, thank you as well. It's great to be here with all of you today to talk about something that perhaps we've all taken for granted, and the way that technology has come to the forefront of our lives in ways that maybe we haven't all thought about for a really long time has just been incredible. And so our United Way actually represents 3 counties. We're Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb. And of course, Detroit is at the heart of the work that we do. And when we started down this pathway, just like many of you, and trying to figure out how we were going to support our community throughout this pandemic, our efforts are always focused on making sure that every household is stable and that every child is thriving. And as Laura mentioned, the connectivity piece involved in all of that, that's the through line in all of the work that we do. And when we started down this road and thinking about what we were going to fund, how we were going to fund it, and basic needs obviously was at the top of that list. Technology is a basic need. And I'll talk a little bit about some recent reports that have been issued that talk specifically about that. But we shouldn't have to choose between feeding our families, making sure that we have transportation, and having connectivity. I'm so glad that Josh made the comment about Netflix, because that is a part of our overall well-being. And when I look at my phone and I look at all of the apps that I have on my phone, from banking to MyFitnessPal to shopping to the news, all these different things that we just count on for information, how dare we say that not everyone deserves that? And so coming and signing on as a partner was a no-brainer for us. We are serving as a fiduciary for Connect 313, but more importantly, we're a thought partner. Well, I shouldn't say more importantly, because somebody's got to be in charge of making sure all the grants go out properly. But we're also advocates in this space, fierce advocates. Many of you have heard us talk about our ALICE report. It stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, and Employed. And it's a report that comes out every other year and gives us an assessment of how our families are doing, particularly our working families, and how they're able to meet their most basic needs. This is a report that looks at healthcare costs, childcare, food, housing, transportation, how we're taking advantage of our taxes. Technology and access to a smartphone is now considered a basic need in this report. And this is a report that started about 10 years ago in New Jersey and is now in 16 different states. And so our conversations can't be anymore, well, we need to fund food and we're going to fund housing and transportation and maybe we'll get to technology. It has to be part of our everyday conversation. I'm pleased to say just at United Way alone, in partnership with so many during the COVID work, we were at $800,000 of funding towards connectivity efforts. And when the team reached out and said, hey, we've got a fantastic opportunity to continue the work that Connect 313 is doing. We have some opportunities for national partnerships. We want to put Detroit on the map for connectivity. We're all in. This is the work that we have to do. Our families are counting on us. And when we think about, it isn't just the device, it isn't just the connectivity, but also the skills and the resources that you need to be able to navigate all of these pieces. We have to invest. I mean, this is mission critical, and none of us know how long we're going to be in this situation. For many of us, we were prepared before the pandemic to be able to work remotely. I can speak for United Way. We literally just set up 211 to be fully remote. And maybe a few weeks after that, the pandemic hit. And I keep thinking, like, what if we hadn't made that investment? What if we weren't able to make that investment? And sadly, that's the choice that a number of our local partners and our businesses have had to make. And we have to stop that. We all have means on this phone. All of us have resources, or we know people, or we know organizations that are getting their arms around this issue of connectivity and figuring out how we can all jointly invest to make lives better for everyone in our community and everyone within our reach. So I could talk about this all day long. Obviously, I'm excited. I'm glad to be a partner. But I just hope as we're listening to this, and I know we get zoomed out because we're on calls all day long, just understand the urgency behind what we're trying to do. It's in the name of Quicken. Every time they call, I know we are about to book it to be able to get the resources to our community. And I'm so thankful for that. So as you all are learning and trying to assess, is this something that you want to invest in, or you're not sure how you want to partner, the first is just take that first step. We are racing to the starting line. So we're still trying to figure out all the different missing pieces. What is it going to take for us to be able to leverage all of the support and leaders and resources that we have in our community. So there's no wrong answer here, but we're hoping that you'll continue to raise your hands, continue to lean in and help us solve these different issues, because this is something I think a year from now, people are going to be talking very, very differently about the connectivity in the city of Detroit, and it will be because of all of the effort that's gone into it. So I'll stop there, but very special thank you to everyone, and looking forward to being a strong partner with you.
Thank you both. Go ahead, Nancy, I see you.
Oh, hi. Do you want me to talk?
Oh, I thought I'm sorry. I thought you had said something. Sorry, that's my apologies.
I'm just really smiling. It just inspires me. I love her.
Love you too, Nance.
Thank you.
So when breaking down this structure and governance a bit more, I'm going to actually turn this over to Jordan Falvey at United Way as well, who is going to break this down in a way where, one, we can actually answer the question, so what are we actually getting involved with? What are we doing? When we keep saying ecosystem, when we keep talking about infrastructure, what do we mean by that? And what are we asking you to help us with to drive this work forward? So Jordan?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. So thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you to Dr. Hudson for, really hyping us up and getting United Way involved in this project. It's very exciting. So today we wanted to just do a very quick high-level overview of the structure and governance that we are still currently developing for Connect 313. You know, this is an evolving process, so we really want to get you guys involved in how this whole structure gets created. So right now, we have the Community Advisory Council. That's the most important part, and that's what we're asking you to join today. So that's going to be this really large group of people who are excited about this topic, who are interested in being able to move forward with this work, and who want to participate in all of these different community conversations about how this work moves forward. So we just wanted to give you kind of a general idea of what the structure kind of looks like at a very high level. So we have the Community Advisory Council, you know, big group. That's everybody who is committed to participate in this project, whether you come to one annual meeting or whether you are sitting on all of these different bodies. The Community Advisory Council is everybody, and we are really excited to have folks really committed to joining that group. And then we have kind of, you know, your traditional decision-making structure. We'll have a board who will vote on things. We'll have an executive committee who will kind of keep the momentum going. We have a fiduciary, and that's United Way for Southeastern Michigan. And then we're going to have all these different subgroups. And again, this is evolving still. So right now, we have kind of these 5 different groups, you know, putting together the work on the ground. So just hitting at a very high level kind of what the decision-making process looks like, where you have these folks on the ground who are doing the work and then making recommendations, which then come to this large group, the Community Advisory Council, to really give that advice and act as the voice of the community and provide that community sentiment, you know, really make sure that we are in line with what the community needs. Then, you know, there might be some back and forth there where it goes back to a work group or goes to another work group to really get that idea fleshed out before it goes up to the executive committee and board to be voted on how it will actually get implemented. So again, just want to reiterate, the Community Advisory Council is the big group of people who are committed to this project, and anyone can join. We really want to make sure that we have a diverse group of people who can really voice community needs so that we really understand what it is that Connect 313 is doing. This is the group who will be helping to actually create the Connect 313 strategy and build on the mission, vision, and goals that Josh went over earlier. And this group is really acting as that sounding board for decisions. So decisions about the strategy, about, you know, what the overall budget is going to look like in terms of resource distribution. You know, we really want to make sure that this group is involved and that people really feel heard. And again, we really want to make sure that everybody joins that group. So we do have a survey for you to sign up and indicate that you are interested in joining the Community Advisory Council. And if you're interested in joining kind of a specific body of work, that's where you get to indicate that as well. So just kind of walking through at a super high level that there are 5 bodies of work right now. We have these subgroups that are work groups. And right now, we just have these 5. We may have others in the future. We might have a task force. We might have some kind of subcommittee. But right now, we're kind of starting at the work group level for the next few months. So the structure and governance work group, the purpose is obviously to develop the structure and governance. So if you are really a nerd about board charters, this is the group for you. And we would love to have more of your input on developing that organizational structure and the decision-making process, just fleshing it out a little bit more. Devices and connectivity. This is, you know, really hammering down on the devices and the high-speed internet and really developing the strategies for equitable adoption to make sure that all Detroiters have access. We have advocacy and ecosystem. So this one is a little bit more complex because we really want to make sure that we're building an ecosystem-based approach that is building on and enhancing existing work. We know there's a lot of you out there, a lot of people on this call who have been in this space for years, if not decades. So we really want to make sure we're building on and coordinating all of the existing fantastic work that you guys have been doing for years now, and to build an advocacy platform around that that allows us to fundraise more effectively at especially the national and federal level. So the Digital Literacy and Skills Work Group, if you are very interested in kind of a holistic, human-centered approach to digital literacy and skill building, this is the group for you. So we have this great graphic, and thank you so much to the marketing team at Quicken who did such a tight turnaround on getting this to us, where we talk about kind of the multi-dimensional approach to digital literacy, where we are looking at all of the different components that really go into being digitally literate and how the identity, protection, and security is connected to some of those other dimensions as well. And again, I just want to reiterate that it's not digital literacy just for the purpose of being digitally literate. We are really building this around improving learning outcomes, improving employability, and improving community well-being. And then we have the Shared Resources Work Group, which is all the other things that are part of the project right now. And I want to let Josh kind of lean in on this section a little bit more, and then we'll pause for a short question break.
Yes, and Jordan, you're doing a fantastic job going through this. I know that there's a lot of nuance here, so I want to commend you for your communication skills. For the shared resource work group, this is one where I think that this is a bit more sizzle here. When we begin talking about data services, we're saying, how do we look at the current data structure we have now to define the issue, and then where are we missing the mark? And I'll just say, many of us in this field, in this space, we know the American Community Survey is the de facto data set that is used at various levels to frame the issue. People, nonprofits use it. I use it. Heck, even at the federal level, it's always using that to determine our advocacy. But being dependent on that one data set has now made us in an interesting position where that data is being collected at a level that doesn't give us the specificity that we need to actually invest in a way that makes sense. And again, when I'm saying investing, I'm not just talking about capital. I'm talking about our resources, I'm talking about our energy, I'm talking about our personnel. When we'll say, and I know everyone's heard this, hey, 29% or 30% of Detroiters don't have internet of any kind. That type of statistic is good enough for us to be able to frame the issue, but it's not good enough for us to be able to actually get to the level of saying, okay, how do we look at a city like Detroit and then actually get in and making a difference in all of these areas in a way that makes sense? In addition, when we begin talking about these data services, we're saying, let's have like the most complete data set in America when it comes to digital inclusion. And namely, the big reason why we're doing that is when we look at the federal level. At the federal level right now, they'll keep making cases on why they're investing in certain communities, mainly rural, and then not in urban. And for us to be able to be empowered by our own data to then make the case for why we need that investment, that's us pushing the needle and saying, no, our stuff is linked to, yes, this community work, but it is the direct correlation to advocacy. And so then on the other layer, when we start talking about neighborhood technology hubs, again, I'm going to keep stressing this. We are looking at people who are already doing this work and saying, how do we enhance the existing neighborhood technology hubs? Then how, wherever we are deficient, do we build new? I'll be honest, I live in the Russell Woods community, and I do not have a place super close to where I live that would actually be, if I didn't have a computer or if I didn't have internet, where would I go within my community? And so some of these recommendations are hitting really close to home for me. But on the neighborhood technology hubs, these are spaces that when we look at our community, it can't just be the library and a rec center, and you just so happen to know that one church that has Wi-Fi near you. When we start talking about these neighborhood technology hubs, it's saying, let's look at our collective ecosystem and say, hey, if you have the space, you have the ability to provide some programming, and you have the ability to provide access to this technology, let's start standing that up in a way where we are not, one, just being misguided to the issue, or just saying you just so happen to live in a neighborhood with a very strong library like the Parkman branch. It's like, no, we want to make it so that no matter where you are in Detroit, these neighborhood technology hubs are accessible for people, for them to do whatever they need to do. And as we look at programming, again, that programming isn't that, oh, all the great programming is just downtown. The programming is meant to be spread all throughout so people can take advantage to skill up or do whatever it is that they need to do. On the community ambassador piece, again, we have a lot of people who are already incredible community ambassadors who are getting word out. We see that with the census. We see that with a variety of different organizations and efforts, whether that's through the community health workers. I mean, we have a lot of ambassadors in Detroit. And so we're saying, okay, on the digital inclusion front, how do we build up that capacity as well for folks to do more? So earlier this year, we saw a lot of the publications going out about the offerings for low-cost internet from the various providers we have in Detroit. And one of the things that we start very quickly, it's like, well, we're not going to leave people to their own devices or the lack thereof to navigate this process without having the backing of folks in the community that can say, hey, no, this is something we need to be considering, or this is what we forget about that. And so like the community ambassadors are our way of saying, look, they can reach in nooks and crannies in the community that we can't. And so empowering them to do more work as well as we do this together, that's a focus of ours. And the last piece that I think is incredibly important is the storytelling. I would say collectively, nationally, locally, wherever you see digital inclusion, the Achilles heel has always been on storytelling. You have a lot of people where, and I'm doing my best to try and keep it at a high enough level, because like it's to our own detriment. The more we get involved in this work, the more nuance we get, and the more we start losing people. And so then the narrative loses its power, it loses its value. In addition, we'll only tell the story about one entity, one organization, as if they represent the entire focus here. And we're saying, no, digital inclusion is a 24/7 thing. You have people who are committed to doing this work and have been committed for quite some time, and they are not a part of this narrative. And so as we focus on storytelling, that's us saying, how do we empower and how do we brag about the great Detroiters who are doing this work and moving it forward? And how do we say, hey, that national narrative around, poverty and this and that, like, yeah, we know we have our things we need to work on, but at the same time, we're doing a really good job. And we have a team of great people who are committed to doing this work that honestly is putting a lot of these other folks to shame. And so that storytelling piece and all of these shared services, those are meant to be shared amongst everybody. So if there's anyone who wants to do work in Detroit, specifically on the digital divide, we want these shared resources to be provided for everybody. It's not meant to be hoarded by anyone. So as the data trust is out there, how do we empower other folks to say, wow, my impact now looks like this. You're getting another lane to quantify what did you do, how good did you do it, who did you interact with, and that's just a really base level. It's even a bit more than that. And the same thing goes for the rest of those. So I know that we can then transition into the questions, because I can go on all day about the shared resources. I'm really happy to see something like that being stood up, and really thankful for the initial seed funding from Quicken Loans to actually get us to where we can even articulate that this is a focus.
Yeah, so I'm just going to put this up on the screen just so we can shave a few minutes off the agenda there, Josh. I know we were going to have you talk about how to get involved, but essentially, again, we just want you to join the Community Council, Community Advisory Council, fill out the survey, let us know, and we will be in touch, before the next meeting. So now let's pause for just a few questions about the structure and governance part of the presentation. If the moderators want to let me know.
Yeah, Jordan, this is Amanda. We got a question regarding the Community Advisory Council. How does the Community Advisory Council inform the decision-making, or are they not connected to that in any way? It wasn't connected to the decision-making structure / hierarchy.
Yes, so it's a huge part of the decision-making process. It's not part of the hierarchy. So the Community Advisory Council has the kind of middle part of the decision-making process, where all the decisions, that we're talking about in terms of recommendations of, should there be more neighborhood hubs, or should there be, more training for staff, or, you know, should we be approaching this national organization? All of that, you know, we are passing through this group. So all the, you know, folks that are coming together to meet get to review all of those recommendations. They get to contribute ideas, and they have the influence little line here over the board, because we will have representation from the community at the board level. And we will also, you know, obviously there'll be representation at the executive committee level also. So the Community Advisory Council has, you know, influence over final decisions. They also have influence over kind of that medium level of decision making to say, you know, this doesn't really align with what the community needs. Let's kick it back to the work group for more work, or to say, we absolutely love this and we really want it to progress. Does that help?
I think so. I guess one more for this, couple more for this structure. Who will make up this board? Is there criteria for how many members are selected?
There will be criteria. Once we have that criteria, we will figure out who will be on the board. If you would like to be part of that criteria conversation, please join the work group, because we don't know.
And I know we answered this in the chat, but is there a deadline to join?
Nope. I mean, this is going to be going on for quite some time. We would love for you to join now, but you know, if you join in December, you can still join.
And this Community Advisory Council, and for the goal of this call, so if you notice, the Community Advisory Council is still over all of these separate work groups and committees, and eventually one step lower than that is the subcommittees. And so any folks who have interest in any of those, realistically, the Community Advisory Council is the entry point, and then we splinter off into like doing that work. And I'll also say that a way that this could work, and you just give me an example. Let's say, for example, there were folks who had a digital literacy platform that we wanted to develop, and the platform was for $2 million. And that was developed at the subcommittee level underneath the digital literacy skills and work group. And then through that, that would then filter up into conversations with the Community Advisory Council and saying, hey guys, the committees have talked about this. This has been a really great thing. What do you guys think? That then committee turns around and says, yeah, you know what? $2 million, eesh. Are we doing anything with the Google Applied Digital Skills platform? You know, they have a digital literacy platform as well. And so then that decision then gets booted right back down, as Jordan said, to say, hey, we should really rethink this. But let's say, for example, that didn't happen and folks unanimously agree that this is one of the greatest things ever, that then transitions into the board. So the Community Advisory Council is, I would say, one of the, if not the most powerful entity at the table, because they're the ones that are ultimately, we're using them to actually like guide our investment and saying, hey, why are we doing what we're doing? Community, you guys are okay with that? You see these values, what are the concerns? That's a chance to raise them beyond the initial level of the subcommittee and the committee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we have just kind of a standard monthly temperature check. And if people are feeling good, awesome, we move forward with stuff. If they're not feeling good, we have to rework it. So are there any other questions that are kind of about this topic before we move on? There will be a Q&A at the end, but you know, because we do want to have time for the funder reflections.
I think just, I know this has been touched on a little bit, just to reiterate, how are the Community Advisory Council members determined?
And just, I think we had, okay, a slide about this. Anyone can join. There are no limits. We can have 5,000 Community Advisory Council members. Literally every resident of the city of Detroit could join. That would be hard to manage, but awesome. You know, we really want to have a really big, diverse group who are representing all the different kind of aspects of the community needs and the community talent and expertise. We really know that there's a lot of people who are already in this space or are tangential to this space. Maybe they're in education or something like that. And we really want to get your voice at the table. And again, it's not like a full-time commitment. Even if you come once a year, you're still part of the council. So, you know, please join.
Awesome. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you. And again, continue to put your questions in the chat because we will have a Q&A. Yeah, get involved, take the survey. That's how you sign up.
So at this point, wanting to just reach out to a few of our core funders who've just been incredible thought partners, community members, and folks who help just really just fine tune where we are. You know, this is, I got to give a huge shout out to the Knight Foundation specifically. Without, you know, their leadership, a lot of, I know my role wouldn't be here. Not to say that this work wouldn't be. We already have amazing people who would have driven us to this point. But you know, with the Knight Foundation's leadership, they said, you know, years ago, how do we look at a more informed community? And we cannot have a more informed community without addressing the digital divide. And so wanting to just you know, give Nate Wallace the floor at the Knight Foundation to just provide some reflection on you know, what's discussed and the importance of bridging the digital divide on behalf of Knight. And you might be on mute. Well, he might still be on mute. So aside from that, wanted to turn this over to DTE as well. You know, DTE has been a huge game changer when it comes to not only the work of Connected Futures, but allowing us to think through Connect 313 as a legitimate structure. I got to give a huge shout out to Nancy Moody. Nancy's feedback has been incredible, really informative to how we should move this work forward. And she's just been a great advocate. Also, I have to say, you know, to Jay Williams at DTE as well, when we were going through the Connected Futures, I would say the more technical components of that, Jay and I were really talking to all of our internet provider partners, just spending a lot of hours on the phone. It was just great to see DTE's commitment and leadership. So Nancy, would you like to reflect on anything?
I will, Joshua, thank you. First of all, I just want to say thank you to the Connect 313 team, to Laura, and to you for the leadership team that you have put together here, and all of the really amazing partners. So it's really quite humbling to be in the midst of all the folks that are on the call and those who've already been speaking. And I really appreciate an opportunity to say a few words about DTE's feelings about what's happening with this Connect 313. And let me say this, Joshua, it has been an evolution for us, which you and Quicken have helped us to realize. So we really came into the Connect 313 space through the portal of Connected Futures, which are the tablets for the Detroit Public School Community District students. When COVID hit, it was very clear to us immediately that the school districts were probably going to be closing. And the thought of having all of those students who we knew from our partnerships with so many nonprofits and our faith leaders did not have devices and or high-speed broadband. We knew that. And we took this dilemma to our leadership team, to Jerry Norcia, and said, oh my gosh, if we do nothing, we're doing something, because the backward slide of all these students in Detroit is going to be scary. And that was really our entry point into the fact that, well, it's not just the students that don't have the connectivity, obviously, it's their parents as well. And speaking with you, Joshua, I'll never forget the Saturday night I called you and said, you've got to help me understand how, right? Do you remember this? How the project that we've taken on is really going to become a catalyst in the Connect 313, which was sort of foreign to my ears still at that time. And once you explained it, it was like, oh my gosh, light bulbs just came on like crazy when we were already aware that if we could get devices into the homes of around 35,000 distinct families and high-speed internet for free for some time period, and through Human IT, who I know is also on the phone, thank you very much, that wraparound support that they need to make sure that they are using the devices for everything that the device can do for the family. We knew that that could be very empowering to the family to get a degree or certifications, to do things online that we've been doing for 20 years without giving it a thought. If you don't have high-speed internet and you don't have a computer, you're not doing these things, and you don't even know that all of that is available to you at your fingertips. And so, Joshua, you just really helped connect the dots for us, and we immediately became very big fans of Connect 313 and how this can, and I really do hope that the Connected Futures devices do become that catalyst, that those 35,000 households will spread such enthusiasm, and it'll be viral-like, and more families will want to know. The awareness raises. We're working already, of course, as you know, on getting the devices for all the rest of the Detroit school kids, and I think that that's going to be done before, I hope, before the summer's out, at least the fundraising around it. And it's, once you've got every single student in the city working on a computer, that hopefully the families learning how to work on the computer, families are talking to friends, and this project comes in and really, really takes it to the next level. And I do believe what you said, we can go from being one of the least connected urban centers in America to literally being the model city in America. So I can't thank you guys enough for what you're doing, how you've done it. And Joshua, you've been way ahead of the curve. Without you doing what you had done before we even went down the Connected Futures path, that project couldn't have, you know, been the catalyst for where this is going to go.
Well, I definitely appreciate the sentiment, Nancy. And like I said, you are fantastic to work with. Your insights is what's driving us forward. I remember we had one call on the structure and governance where I was just like, I don't know, any of this is supposed to work. And I mean, you came in alongside Punita, and it just like really gave us the I would say the confidence that we're able to then share this broadly with the large community now and say, yeah, no, this is how this works, with confidence that you know, you were able to instill in us. So I thank you for that, and definitely the leadership on Connected Futures, because that was a game-changing play. And as we know this, as other cities started then, you know, coming afterwards, like Connected Futures was the one thing where they're like, man, Detroit's on this. I had other cities calling right afterwards and saying, well, how do we get our kids connected? Because if Detroit's doing it, then we, which is already setting up the foundation for us to be thinking about in that national model category, if everyone else is already looking for what is Detroit doing on this front. So I want to thank you for your leadership on the front line on that, because yeah, that is reaping dividends right now in these conversations. The other you know, entity I want to turn this over is to Microsoft, specifically Warren Flood. Warren and I moved to Detroit around the same time. And we were kind of just trying to race to see who's going to know more people first. And Warren has just been a really great addition to this Connect 313 work. In addition, getting Microsoft much more involved to champion this work forward. You know, he's been super influential in the data services framing. And so I know there's some questions on that for which he can, you know, answer some of those. And if he goes too far in the weeds, I'll bring it back a bit. But, you know, Warren, would love to get some of your reflections as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. It's funny because I feel like I spent the first year here in Detroit shaking my head no, because Josh and I, we were talking to the same entities in around the same work, but at first I really thought my work was separate from Josh's. I thought my work sort of picked up where his left off. Once folks are connected, once they have a basic digital literacy, then when I realized that, oh, wait a minute, no, none of my work is possible without the foundation of the digital divide that being taken into account. So then I always started drawing my ecosystem, and my work started with Josh's work. And I just said, this part here is going to be taken care of somehow. I don't know how, magic wand, but like this part, once this part's taken care of, then we can tap into, you know, a lot of the more advanced skilling for employability, and you know, sort of higher level technology that could be empowering to a community. But then very much like Nancy, the more that I heard Josh talk, my I don't get this started turning to light bulbs going off, and then my head breaking off, saying like, oh my gosh, everything that I do is actually under this digital divide banner, this digital inclusion banner in the city. So not only is the work that I'm doing when it comes to skilling for employability, or the things that might be obviously part of digital literacy, but the work that we're doing when it comes to racial equity, the work that we're doing when it comes to healthcare, the work that we're doing across the board can be described and improved through the lens of the digital divide work. So I was all in at that point. The thing that really got me though, thinking beyond just the role that Microsoft could play and contribute to this ecosystem, to being all in on Connect 313, was really inspired by Connected Futures, right? Just seeing how the community came together so boldly and quickly and inspired so many other conversations around the nation that people were asking me about. I'm like, I don't know how they did it. Like, I'm just absolutely amazed. And that's what I think is the real magic or the beauty of what's happening here. Every single person on this call and every single person who will become involved in Connect 313 in the next coming weeks, days, weeks, and months, you're really tapping and you're really creating something special that I cannot overstate this enough. The rest of the nation is looking squarely at Detroit to help them figure out what they're doing. So not only is the impact that we're doing here benefiting every Detroiter, no matter where they are in their digital journey, but this is also having a very, very big impact in other cities, in other regions throughout the country, and quite frankly, based on conversations had in the last few days, globally as well. So I'm just really excited to be all in on Connect 313. So excited to play a small role along with everyone else on this call, because what is being created here really is special. It's unique. It's more comprehensive than anything that I've seen. And the approach is really going to have an impact that not only outlives the work that we do in 2020, 2021 and beyond, but is also going to resonate and reverberate throughout the country. So thank you to everyone. And I'm really, really excited to continue along this journey with you all.
Heck yeah, Warren. way to close that out. And so I think that we're at the question and answer portion of our presentation. And you know, I just want to say I know a lot of folks had to run. An hour and a half that was tough. This would be significantly easier in person. So trust me, this is so hard for me. I just do not like this. I mean, I can't even react to anything. I'm just staring at a dot. So it's just, but thank you for everyone's patience in us getting here. And at this point, you know, moderators want to open it up. That is my email. That is my email for sure. So if you do have questions that are much more specific that were not covered specifically here, you know, have at it. And I will do my best to respond in a very timely manner alongside the siege that is happening in my inbox as we speak. So moderators, please, let's get some of these questions flowing before we have to hop off today.
Yeah, great. We have one. There hasn't been the incentive for carriers to go into low-income areas where they may not make as much money. How do you balance their business concerns with the public interest concerns and needs?
It's a great question, and this is one. When I start talking about internet providers, and there are some carriers on this line too, so I'm glad, but not every corporate model is meant, like the corporate model isn't meant to fit everybody. So we do need community models. You know, I will always do my best to uplift the incredible work of the Detroit Community Technology Project, specifically the Equitable Internet Initiative, where we say, hey, where does it make sense for this to be a community-driven model? And so I think that there are definitely ways where people, specifically on the corporate side, do need to be serving residents, broadly speaking. But at the same time, I do think that for community-driven approaches, specifically as we look at wraparound, specifically as we look at how do people even feel about our providers? Do they feel safe? Do they feel respected? I think those are questions that we want to use that level of nuance, specifically as we begin framing interventions within the Devices and Connectivity Committee. And so if people are interested in exploring that more, that is a conversation that is being held, that's held here at this level, at the Community Advisory Council level, but specifically in the Devices and Connectivity level as well, to say, hey, let's begin thinking more about connectivity and as it relates to everyday residents in a way where we're actually able to see, folks' full concerns being realized as it relates to connectivity. And so that's not, I would say a shot or a diss to the larger corporate providers. It's much more saying, hey, play in your swim lanes, but at the same time, where it makes sense, we needed to be developing newer models that's going to serve the residents that we need to be serving, because there cannot be a consistent 15 to 30%, give or take, for residents who don't have internet. That's leading me to believe that maybe, and that's a longitudinal figure, that's leading me to believe that there needs to be a lot more work done, and it can't just be a corporate thing. This needs to be a collective thing, really driven by the community there. And so again, that is a conversation that we are going to fine tune and create intervention to address that specifically within the Devices and Connectivity Committee.
Great. Is Connect 313 a nonprofit organization?
No. Connect 313 is a partnership structure comprised of various entities, and the United Way managing the fund and the fiduciary operations. But no, Connect 313 is not a nonprofit. It is a very, very fast-growing partnership structure.
Great. Another question, municipal Wi-Fi is currently preempted by state law. To begin the process, we would need a feasibility study to provide last mile service. How can we move that priority forward?
Thank you, David Palmer, who most likely asked that question. I can guess he asked that question. That sounds exactly like what he would say. Yeah. Feasibility studies and any studies, that is within the Advocacy and Ecosystem Committee. And so when we're looking at how are we, and yes, oh, Mike Watts is on here too, yes. Yeah, so Muni Wi-Fi is not prohibited by, okay, no, I'm not gonna go down that path. I'm gonna say that is a conversation specifically in the Advocacy and Ecosystem. Advocacy and Ecosystem as a committee, that's us saying, how do we activate policy? How do we influence policy? How do we look at where we are now and get policy to benefit our current situation? And so when we began looking at municipal Wi-Fi, when we began looking at municipal broadband in general, how do we get in a way that's actually favoring us? I'm not gonna get too in the weeds, but the Michigan Telecommunication Act, if we were to put some pressure on it, could really put Detroit in a better position than we're currently in. But again, that is something that gets pushed actually through the committee, the Advocacy and Ecosystem Committee, which would then get the reflection by this larger Community Advisory Committee, and then we move forward that way. So all of these questions that are asking, if folks have that type of general interest in this, the committees are meant to drive that work and enhance in areas. And so this is just one that's directly related to, I would say, more municipal affairs. But the same thing could be said if I'm looking at, I'm getting really technical, but E-rate funding for libraries, forget it, I even said that, but regardless, that's through the Advocacy and Ecosystem layer.
Great. What type of data will be collected from residents?
So I can punt this to Warren, but really when we began looking at this data, the data services, it's meant to be more of a collective thing. And so it's like, let's say on one hand, if we're looking at devices, like what devices do residents have from a form factor perspective? Do people have, and it still falls like the same devices, connectivity and digital skilling, but like on the device piece, like do people feel comfortable? I'm not gonna look at these questions because I see them in the chat now, but do people feel comfortable with the devices that they have? What devices do they have? In addition, on the internet, what type of internet do people have? What's the speed of their internet? Right now, we are actually in the process, thanks to the Quicken Loans team, developing a speed test tool where people can actually say like, hey, are you getting the speeds that you're paying for? In addition, where are we seeing gaps? And make no mistake, this is one, residential, but it's also two, like, neighborhood collectively. Like the same thing could be said, where are the computers in your neighborhood, or where's the technology in your neighborhood? What's the speed if you have Wi-Fi? One, where's the Wi-Fi if you have speed on it? And then three, what type of trainings are happening, which then would still correlate to on the digital literacy front. Do you feel comfortable, or what's your digital skilling level? And so it's really meant not to be like a Big Brother invasive way. It's much more of us saying, hey, how do we, as we look to scale up resources accordingly, how do we make it so that if we want Detroit in specific areas to be more digitally literate or have more digital skilling, well, then that's us needing that information, one, at the residential level to say, why are we doing where we're doing? But two, at the neighborhood level to say, hey, in these neighborhoods, we're just not really seeing resources being allocated in a way that makes sense. So how can we jumpstart that now with the data that we have?
And to just clarify further on that, resident data, the only resident data that we would collect would be the self-reported through a survey. So we really are talking about community data and then publicly available community data, not collecting anything that someone did not willingly submit through a survey. Just to clarify, when it comes specifically to residents versus the general large data sets that we're going to be collecting overall, that's really community data.
Great. This one might be for Jordan. I know we answered this in the chat, but just to let everybody know, do you have to live in the city of Detroit to join the advisory council?
Nope. If you're, serving people here, or, have a larger service area, we still really want to bring your voice to the table.
Great. This one might be for Josh again. Is there a combination solution approach to internet? Broadband where feasible, Wi-Fi where necessary, or is the focus on broadband fixed connections only? And they're especially worried about the eviction foreclosure rate being predicted due to COVID-19.
Where it makes sense, and when it makes sense. I think that, and I can definitely ping Human IT here as well, from the services that they offer, and being someone that does indiscriminately sign up people for internet. But this is something where it has to make sense for people. Typically, when we start talking about like that home broadband, that's for people who might be a little bit more housing secure. And so it's like, well, that might make sense, but if you're moving 6 to 7 times in a year, well, then maybe that home internet might not make sense. But at the same time, that doesn't necessarily mean that we don't need advocacy on the front of, and I'm not going to say what provider I have, but when I was having a lot of the calls, specifically during the Connected Futures time, I was on the phone a lot. I had to take a lot of those calls in my car because the network was so poor where I lived. And so it's like, no, this is a collective thing to say like, hey, how do we enhance these services for all of us? And so where it makes sense for the home broadband, let's definitely advocate. But at the same time, let's make sure that if people are not in that position and that model does not make sense for them, let's explore ways where we can, again, keep supporting with the folks' lifestyle that they have. And that's correlative to just internet performance in general. I think that I don't want to just stop at broadband. Broadband, for those who are unaware, is a more of a speed threshold. So 25 megabits, that's the download speed, and 3 megabits upload. I think that in our economy, 3 upload as we try and do video chatting actually does not do us much. It's not really great for us. So I think that we have a unique opportunity, specifically through that advocacy and ecosystem committee, to then say, well, hey, what internet speeds actually make sense for Detroiters? What Wi-Fi speeds actually make sense to Detroiters? What Wi-Fi protections actually make sense for Detroiters? And I think that we have a great opportunity to move this forward. So at the beginning of the question, yes, form factored, but at the same time, making sure that standard makes the most sense as well, given where we want to be, and not just subscribing to the standard that the federal government's pushing.
Great. We have a couple more. I'm going to read this one word for word. So the internet created another set of haves and have-nots, and that was between consumers and creators that benefit proportionality in the wealth that was created. Now much to do is talk about smart cities, which I fear will further exacerbate the gap in creators who assume the lion's share of the trillions of dollars to be created in consumers. Thoughts on how we don't repeat the mistakes of the past?
That sounds like Paul. Did Paul
That's
write
Paul.
that?
That's Paul.
Wow, I know these people. Yeah, so one, I've been to a number, I've spoken at a number of these smart city things, and ultimately a smart city is a responsive city. And I think that people, when they go on the smart city tear, you know, and it's sexy. I'll admit it is. Like, they're like, oh, you can predict that and get smarter about that. And it's like, yeah, that's fine. But at the core of it, it's a responsive city. And I think that when people were developing a lot of these smart city solutions, that's exactly what they were doing. They were focusing on solutions, and they weren't really focusing on like the problems that existed. And if one of the problems that we're looking at is saying that, hey, people don't feel empowered here, people aren't being represented here. And so it's like, well, to avoid that, at the core of it, let's just be responsive to the needs of the community, which the Community Advisory Council is a really great way to be responsive to those needs. But, you know, I say that, you know, somewhat jokingly, but also serious, in that a lot of times decisions are made specifically at a technical level, assuming that people don't understand the ramifications, or that they're going to be understanding enough, then they'll just kind of distract them a bit. What we're saying is like, no, every single thing that we're pushing forward, we want that feedback. We want people on the ground. I can't tell you, from a smart city, let's say, I'm just going to pick one, a smart city water management thing, that it's like, wow, like who's actually going around and making sure that I'm educated on that, or that I know about that, or smart anything. I believe that the smart folks bypass a lot of what a smart city represents. City, i.e. civic, that's people. And I see the solutions devoid of people. And so for us, I think that because we're so resident focused, and we want to get that feedback and solicit that, I think we're bypassing with the big area of, yeah, we can move really fast here. We could have a perfect plan right now that we push out. And if we didn't solicit any feedback, I guess it's not a perfect plan, but it would just be that. And I think that's where the smart city space is. A lot of people who have a lot of great solutions, but they're really missing that civic and you know, residential feedback. And so for us, we want to mitigate that as much as possible by soliciting as much resident feedback and stakeholder feedback to drive our decision making.
That is an excellent segue. Have you reached out to Detroit Block Clubs?
Yes, yes. So all last year I spoke at a number of block clubs. That was my calendar for majority of my evenings, and even during the day. In addition, you know, I made sure to send this communication to a very large block club network that I have. In addition, for pushing this to some of the other folks at the city who have those networks as well. And so the Detroit block clubs, whoever brought that up, I'm very glad that they brought them up, because they are core partners integral to this work. Specifically, I could see them being very valuable on the community ambassador piece, because that's, you know, comprised of community ambassadors. In addition, you know, guiding our decision-making on that larger community advisory council, and also staffing our committees to get this work done. So whoever brought up the block club thing, thank you. And I would love to see as much representation as possible, if not all of them, to help steer our decision-making here.
Hi, just a quick time check. We are at 3:30. So if there's like one very, very quick question that Josh wants to address, otherwise we should really talk about next steps.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know, I forgot, Jamie does have that hard stop too at 3:30. So next steps. One, for those of you who do not, subscribing to the Connect 313 listserv would be very helpful for both me and you, hopefully, if you're interested in this work. That's where, one, we've been pushing a lot of opportunities, whether, you know, there's been some hiring in this space, and I've been making sure to push those opportunities through that listserv. In addition, you know, webinars that are relevant to the topic, or just updates, meetings, and even other folks like who are on the Connect or the Community Advisory Council, as they have updates or as they have events, we push those events through the listserv as well. In addition, wanting folks to complete the survey. On the actual survey, I believe that's being posted in the chat. On the survey, it actually allows, you know, folks to, one, submit feedback, but in addition, giving you folks an opportunity on the committee level to say what committees they're interested in, and then in addition, like looking at where, if they're interested in serving on the Community Advisory Council. And then on the last one, our next Community Advisory Council meeting is in August. Pretty much we want people to get used to this cadence. And so this is a monthly thing. I do apologize for the lapse from our first Connect 313 meeting earlier this year and the one now. I'll just say there was a lot of intentionality going into building out what we see today, but by no means are we done. I've been saying that that's been much more wet cement. And so would really want folks to, one, continue inviting their networks, show up for our next Community Advisory Council meeting in August. And in the meantime, for folks who have additional capacity, who are then signing up as an interest in those committees, we are already meeting for those. And so as people continue to sign up, or as people want their voice to be heard in those, would really love to have the opportunity to engage with people much more between now and the next Advisory Council meeting, which is in August, which is at the end of August. Do not have a specific date yet, which is why it just says August, but we'll get that out, you know, as people continue to do their surveys. And I actually realize I'm the one closing this out.
Yes,
so,
thank you, Josh.
I want to thank everybody for their time. That, you know, a lot of you probably have my personal cell, but my email as well. You know, and if it's not, it's in the slides. We're going to push it out. But want to thank everybody. This is something where, again, it's an ecosystem play. Looking at enhancing as much of the existing work as possible. I by no means am saying that we are absolutely perfect, and there's a lot of learning and a lot of knowledge here. But again, we need great leaders and great community leaders for us to drive this stuff forward. It can't just be you know, one or two entities. This is a monumental lift. So I want to thank everybody for the time today and the subsequent time, if interested, that's going to drive this stuff forward. So enjoy your weekends, and I'm going to stop recording this webinar now.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.